if you can somehow, through your example and through your messaging and through your culture, in the malls, in the cinemas, in the retail stores, if you can make people feel a sense of human love, a sense of human connection, and train your people to model that so they're not victims. Most people are checked out. You go into most stores, they're playing with their phones, they're disengaged, they're not really there. That's why companies are losing business. Leave people better than you found them. Starbucks grew very quickly under Howard Schultz. He left, it ran into trouble. He came back in the mid-1990s, he recalibrated, and doing well in many ways once again. But there's one story, because in one Starbucks coffee shop, there was a woman who was a leader without a title, and she was the manager, and she understood that the business of business is people. It's human connections. How do you build a movement? One person at a time. There is nothing more important than your personal honor. Even more important than your income, your honor. How do you feel about yourself? Call it your self-esteem. That's really the most valuable thing that you have. And so, one person at a time, we are building a movement. That's how you build it. How do you build brand fanatics? One customer at a time. And if this was obvious, and if this was easy, and if everyone was doing it, then why is it so rare? Why are there so few times that you experience a merchant of wow? And so this Starbucks manager who really got it, that the business of people, she had a favorite customer, and her favorite customer was named Irene. And Irene was a woman in her 80s who had been a school teacher. And every morning, Irene would walk into the Starbucks coffee shop, holding the hands of another elderly gentleman who was also very well dressed, and they had the same morning ritual. They would order a tall cup of coffee, 2 cups, 1 pastry, 2 forks, and they'd find the same table and they'd have a conversation. Because a great relationship is a conversation. If you lose the conversation, you lose the relationship. Great business is a conversation. You lose the relationship and the conversation with your customers, you'll lose the business. And a great human life is a conversation. If you don't have conversations with your highest self, you'll lose your sense of self. One day, the manager noticed that Irene was no longer showing up at the coffee shop, and because she truly cared, she got concerned. 2 weeks later, the manager was in a bank and she saw Irene, but Irene was no longer looking beautifully dressed, perfectly attired. Irene was looking disheveled. Irene was looking confused. Irene was looking frightened. The manager walked over to Irene and said, "Irene, we haven't seen you at the coffee shop. Is everything okay? You're usually in there every morning. What happened?" And Irene said, "Well, no, everything's not okay. The man that I usually come into the coffee shop with was my husband, and he took a massive stroke and he passed away. I'm all alone. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can make it." The manager, because she genuinely cared, said, "Well, why don't you come back to the coffee shop and have a cup of coffee?" And Irene looked at the manager and said, "But who would I have it with?" And the manager said, "Oh, Irene, I will have it with you." And the 2 human beings went back to the coffee shop, ordered a tall cup of coffee, 2 cups, 1 pastry, and had a conversation. Makes me think of what Maya Angelou said. She said, "People may forget what you say. People may forget what you do. No one will ever forget how you make them feel." I think one of the best things you can do, ladies and gentlemen, is start the serious work on yourself, so that you don't just bring your mindset to work, you bring your heart set to work, and you bring your soul set to work. Leadership is a massive privilege. You have the opportunity to shape, mold, elevate human lives every day. How awesome a blessing is that? How seriously are you taking your leadership?